About 15 minutes ago, it became clear that Haley Stevens was available to us. And frankly, we decided with that information to put everything else aside. Because whether Michigan wants to be or not, it is, for the moment, the center of the American political universe due to a hard-fought Democratic Senate primary and existential questions for the Democratic Party that came to fruition in that Senate primary and questions about its future ideological compass. Stevens is central to all of that and joins us, I'm happy to say, now for her very first TV interview since that primary. Haley Stevens, welcome to the Takeout.
Hey, thank you so much.
So when you talked to my colleague Ed O'Keefe before the primary election, one of the things you first pointed out about Abdul El-Sayed is he was part of the uncommitted movement in Michigan in 2024. Many Michiganders reasonably wonder if that movement hadn't existed, could Kamala Harris have carried Michigan? And you said you're a proven fighter, implying that he's not. Why now endorse him? And do you believe your supporters will believe your advocacy for him now?
Well, Major, you've been in political news for a long time, probably decades, maybe longer than I've been running. And I'll tell you this, everything that needed to be said in the primary was said. All right. I'm a Michigander. The differences were aired out. And look, we all know it's a big tent party. That's the Democrats' mantra. The things important for Michigan, lowering costs, standing up to the abuses of power, the healthcare agenda, we're in agreement. There's, yes, a disagreement on, my values on, some of the things in the Middle East, that was played out in this primary. But here's the deal. The Republicans did a whole lot of nothing. Mike Rogers was hiding. I don't know where he was. I never saw him once. One time I saw him in an airport going to New York or something. Seriously. This guy wants to rubber stamp Trump's agenda. This is not going to work for Michigan. The time for all this negative, nasty, the disunity stuff, it's over. I'm going to continue to hold my beliefs. I know it's a word sometimes that people don't understand, but I am a Democratic Zionist. I'm proud to say that. I know people boo on that. But there's a home, in the party that I'm still in for someone like me. I'm going to push those who go into elected leadership. But right now, I am going to be a part of stopping MAGA and Trump. These guys are corrupt. They're broken. They're wrong. I want to make sure that the people on the east side of Detroit get health care. I want to make sure that the industrial policy agenda that's going to lessen our dependence on China and create jobs is heard. I'm going to continue to wonk out and work out. I actually just had Christina Hines, who won a really big primary in Michigan's 10th district. This is Macomb County for all you
Mhm.
people who like politics, right? I I had Christina over to the house today. We're
Mhm.
fundraising, we're doing politics, we're getting her endorsements. She's going to flip the seat from red to blue. She's going to be an amazing voice. Please look her up. Please pay attention. We already were talking to party leadership about this because the deal is that Hakeem Jeffries is going to become the Speaker of the House from a place called Michigan, and Christina Hines is going to be a huge part of that.
Will you, Haley Stevens, campaign right alongside and actively and visibly and repetitively with Abdul El-Sayed?
Well, I think I just told you I was already campaigning. I'm
I
out.
mean,
I had Well, oh, you're talking
uh,
about whatever he wants me to do. You know what I mean? Look, I'm a sitting congresswoman. 3 months left or so in the term. We got major elections going on. I'm going to be a part of it. They know. Look. He's good with the rallies. All right. The rallies are a big part of it. I do a lot of meet and greets. With the small business owners. I spend a ton of time with Black-owned businesses. I got a great proposal about how to do capital structure investment into small businesses that are Black owned. This is equity, this is intentionality, and there's a bunch of great organizations that I have relationships with
mhm.
in Detroit and Muskegon Heights. I want to make sure those guys still feel heard. So, that's Abdul's got a big campaign to run. We did the unity deal. He's going to make a lot. It's 89 days. But my focus here is, no Rogers, no Republicans. I think it's a blue wave for the Dems. I really
Mhm.
do. I love the party. I love my values and my beliefs, of which I just shared with you. And
Right.
Abdul and I had we had our primary. It's over. It's over.
So I understand that, and I applaud you for accepting the result and pitching in. But during the primary, some things did come up that really cut very close to voters in Michigan. One of them is what happened in March 2026 when a truck loaded with gasoline plowed in to the Temple Israel in West Bloomfield Township. And you told my colleague Ed O'Keefe, that Abdul El-Sayed's reaction to that was problematic for you. It was problematic for a lot of Michiganders. And you said he doesn't recognize Israel's right to exist. Those seem to me, Haley Stevens, to cut very close to the bone. They're not just typical political conversation issues. Have you resolved where Abdul El-Sayed stands on those issues? And when he said, as he did yesterday, that his priority for Jewish Michiganders is just as much as it is to protect his own children, do you believe him?
Well, look, I don't speak for Abdul, but I think he knows where I stood on that issue and where I continue to stand. I'm very focused on rebuilding the temple, where many of my friends have their precious children in day school. That was in my congressional district. It remains a serious matter. And I'm going to make sure that the voices, and the folks who have been impacted all across Oakland County by that temple bombing, and the voices of our Jewish community are heard. And I'm going to do that in the way that my involvement and participation in the American political process allows. Look, let's be really clear, because you're relitigating a primary that's over. It's over. I said what I had to say, and I stand by what I had to say. To be honest with you, and I believe Abdul heard me. But the deal is that no American is my enemy. No Republican is my enemy. No Democrat is my enemy. We got to cut this stuff out. We got to start working together. We got to start looking at this country as, this beautiful, free place that we love. My views are going to continue to be on display. I'm going to continue to
Mhm.
be in this party, speaking out against political violence, speaking out against anti Semitic violence, and, all forms of political violence and hate. Absolutely. And in the meantime, the competition's still rolling. I think you guys in the media are going to be coming out to Michigan. This will be exciting. We know you love our state. That's a good thing. Come and go to our small businesses. We need you there if when you're in town. But we're going to do something special. This was a special, historic primary. We all know it. Everyone was calling it out one way or another that there was going to be a 15-point loss, and that wasn't the deal. And that's okay, that these guys had it wrong, and we just showed them the Michigan way. And that's what we're going to show you in November, when we beat Mike Rogers.
With your emphasis on the future, let me just ask you one question, Haley Stevens, before I let you go, because you raised healthcare and it's a big issue. Abdul El-Sayed is an advocate for Medicare for all. Lots of people who look at Medicare for all and all the things that would cover and all the implications of it say it is simply unaffordable, that it would require tremendous amounts of taxation in order to fund all the things therein promised. Are you all on board for Medicare for all?
Well, look, we need change, and we need universal health care, and we need health care for everyone. And something that I said to Abdul when, I called to congratulate him on getting the Democratic nomination for US Senate in the great state of Michigan, is that we need to make change. I've been working on doing that in the US House to, deal with the bureaucracy and the entanglements of our healthcare system, beating back big pharma to lower the cost of prescription drugs. That was a big triumph. There is more to do. And I said to Abdul, I said, look, it's hard to change it from the inside. I tried. He's picking up the torch alongside Alyssa Slotkin, who was at our unity breakfast. Senator Alyssa Slotkin's going to be, I think she's campaigning alongside Abdul. She's our top of the ticket person, right? She's our soon to
Mhm.
be senior senator, Gary Peters. He's on board, and we care about the makeup of the Senate, and maybe we can get to something as big as that. I don't, he'll push for it. I push for my bills. Sometimes I get Democrats and Republicans. Sometimes I just get a few of each. By the way, speaking of,
Hmm.
taking on some of the painful issues, 414 of my colleagues, every voting member of Congress joined me on a big resolution on free and fair people who were taken hostage on October 7th. That's, was a while ago, but that was a good one. No one covered it, but
Right.
we got
I
every voting
understand.
member of Congress on that one. So, and that was a resolution. But the big healthcare stuff, Major, look, they'll do it. They'll work on it, and they're going to try, just as I've tried. That's the beauty of this country we
Hmm.
live in, this democracy, this freedom. And actually, Abdul shared. He said, look, he didn't come from a free country.
Hmm.
He grew up sometimes going to Egypt in the summer, and
Right.
he saw what
Understood.
it was like not to have freedom. So I know you're trying to get another question in. That's good. That's your job. My job's to get out the truth, and get. See, he's laughing. America
Uh,
needs to laugh a little bit, but good to see you.
Exactly. Haley Stevens, I have to move on. We changed the entire format of the show because you became available. I'm glad we did. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you on the campaign trail.
Okay, thanks.